Michael Kugelman, there are those who will say that this is the role that India has chosen to play. As Meera Shankar said, India has taken its G20 presidency very seriously. We made the effort to pitch ourselves as a leader of the global south and to make the West aware that some of these concerns on financial inclusion, on debt restructuring involve giving the global south its due, the African Union possibly as a future member. Do you see that the West sees, America sees India's role in the way India perceives it, that we have taken a leadership position as a potential leader of the global south to redraw in a way the global balance of power?
Well, I'm sure that the U.S. acknowledges and indeed recognizes that that role that India sees itself playing as a bridge to the global South. But it's an especially important role to play, I would argue, in that we talk so much about the great power rivalries playing out within the G20, but I would argue that it's not only the fault lines don't only lie in the great power rivalries; they also lie to some extent between the West and the global South, right? I mean, we know that, for instance, I would think that some of the developing countries in the G20 would want the U.S. and other wealthier countries from the West and the developed world to provide more assistance, more financial assistance on climate change mitigation and adaptation than the richer countries may be willing to provide. So I think this is a time when it's especially important for India to be championing the needs, the demands of the global South, for sure. But I think that the U.S. recognizes that India's presidency in the G20 has served a variety of functions, all very beneficial for the most part. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there are areas of disagreement between the U.S. and its fellow developed countries in the G20 mm-hmm. and countries in the global South, particularly when it comes to how much assistance, how much financial assistance to provide to help the global South address these very serious challenges, climate change, food insecurity, that impact the global South disproportionately.
And Andrew, your sense, how does China see India's role? The fact that India is the host, the fact that we have had serious border challenges, how does China, in your view, see India's presidency?
Well, I think it's instructive that both President Xi and President Modi have recently agreed to de-escalate the border disputes, because both countries realize that there is no point continuing arguing and confronting each other over something that has been hanging over so many years. But rather than spending the time and effort on global challenges and regional challenges. Now, as far as the G20 is concerned, first of all, it is by no means regarded as a rival bloc, or even the word bloc is wrong in a multipolar world, with what's happening with the BRICS country, with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and so on and so forth. But there are deep fault lines in sort of disagreements. For example, the reform of the IMF, for example, the International Monetary Fund, has been a great deal of talk over the past decades, and nothing has changed because the United States still want to retain its blocking vote in this international financial institution. But there are a common agreement, for example, on the pandemic, on sharing of health safety equipment, health safety products, and sharing the kind of technology and pharmaceuticals, and climate change. Of course, there is a substantial agreement on mitigation, various other measures countries can build up. And even in global conflicts, I think there is very little disagreement that countries don't want wars necessarily. So I think that the G20, the magic of diplomacy is to seek the highest common denominator, while not relying on words only, because words won't change anything, but then to capture the kind of domestic political dynamics that could coalesce into an agenda that would be comfortable with the participating countries in the G20.
But is there just to very quickly, is there full trust that the Chinese, how does China see Mr. Modi's leadership?
Well, the leadership is by rotation. So I think that China doesn't want to challenge this leadership, because this is
Mr. Modi the individual. Mr. Modi the individual.
No, I don't think that China wants to make an enemy with President Modi. And in fact, that's China's policy all along in other groups in like the BRICS, like the New Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Development Bank, and so on and so forth. There's a great deal of multipolar sharing of power, sharing of positions.
Right.
I don't think that just China's policy to divide the world into two blocks, in spite of the rhetoric in some other countries. Because the whole world is so much interconnected. We all live in a global village. And of course, some countries have a larger size. Some countries are more endowed with natural resources. But that's the reality. And I think that China's policies all along is that to accept differences. Of course, there are differences, but differences doesn't have to translate into confrontation. Okay. So there's a very common Chinese saying that harmony can be achieved despite deep differences. There is a kind of holistic approach that lends itself both in Eastern philosophy, including the philosophy in India.
India's #1 political reporter
defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% news that matters. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV. India's #1 political reporter
defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% news that matters. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV. India's #1 political reporter
defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% news that matters. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV. India's #1 political reporter
defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% news that matters. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV.